Welcome to Big Business This Week. I'm JD Durkin here on the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange, joined today by a friend of ours here at the network. You may have seen him as the host of the Thinking Crypto podcast right here on Cheddar, the one and only Tony Edward. Tony, thanks for being here.
JD, great to be here and to talk about the markets, even though it's a pretty rough day.
Yeah, rough day to say the least here, my friend. The S&P 500, as of the time you and I are recording this conversation, Thursday morning, the day after so-called Liberation Day, the market's down 4.3%. What are you seeing? What are you making of the market turbulence so far this morning, Tony?
Yeah, JD, it's tariff turmoil. The markets are taking a huge beating. It's blood on the streets. You know, gold was ripping over the past few weeks, and it seemed to be a leading indicator. But then the tariff just dampened that, and precious metals and gold, crypto stocks, they're all down. Even the dollar is taking a dump.
Yeah, does that surprise you that we're not really seeing that kind of hedge or that flight to safety? We saw a lot of downward pressure on gold this morning. Same for silver. Didn't really seem to be a few hours ago like we had the rotation into cryptocurrencies. Is there any flight to safety going on right now? We're just kind of down across the board, and does that reaction surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me because the level of uncertainty is at an all-time high. We're talking a global tariff war and trade war that's taking place here. So markets can't find the angle. What angle do you go in, right? Sometimes you'll have a certain region or country that's having a problem, or it could just be the United States where then capital can fly overseas. But now it's back and forth. It's red light, green light, red light, green light. Are the tariffs actually happening? Or are they indeed happening? This is the confusion that the market hates.
Yeah, what are among the biggest unanswered questions, the unknowns? I feel like there are more unknowns than knowns at this point with relation to this kind of newly implemented tariff policy or how the White House went about going about their calculations. What are those biggest questions for you, and do you think they're kind of weighing on investor sentiment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big question is, what is Trump actually trying to achieve here? Is this indeed about boosting the United States' wealth via these tariffs and opening up more manufacturing in the United States? Or is this a kind of strategic move to bring people to the negotiation table? And that's the big question. What is indeed the genesis, the root of all this? And I'm invested in the markets and stocks and crypto, and I can't put my finger on it. And then you look at the interviews with Howard Lutnick and Scott Bessent, they don't come off very confident, unfortunately. And while I'm not saying tariffs are entirely bad, I think long-term they could be good. The way they went about it, ripping the Band-Aid off, I think has people spooked.
I think there's an additional challenge here as you and I are having this conversation on Thursday, because tomorrow morning we get the March jobs report. So as if all these other pressures on the market weren't enough, now we go into tomorrow's jobs report with a lot of uncertainty and perhaps a set of data that could further reinforce this idea of stagflation, or an economy that's contending with high inflation, maybe rising unemployment and stagnating economic growth. What will you be taking into consideration as we get into tomorrow's session, knowing how big that jobs report is?
Yeah, I'm gonna be paying attention to this, and as well as many other folks. And I think we need to hear from the Fed. I think the Fed needs to start cutting rates ASAP, um, because we need some relief here. I think right now the markets don't know which direction things are going to go, as far as the next 3 to 6 months. So we need some sort of action here, and the job numbers could be pretty bad, given that we're in this kind of almost stagflation type of zone. So we need the Fed to take action. And one of the things I am seeing as far as signals, Trump mentioned that with his tariffs in place, he would give a bailout, a stimulus to farmers. I think he's going to have to bail out other industries. So will this stimulus kickstart the next business cycle where there's more hiring and jobs and growth in wages and things like that? It's possible.
How do you think investors should approach trying to find their entry points back into this market? Because it's sort of like catching a falling knife, right? I mean, you kind of sit there a week ago when we were off of lows and said, well, maybe the market won't retest the 5,500 level. And now we've retested it. We're now far below it. We're at 54.16 in real time as you and I are chatting here. What do you say to someone who's trying to find that entry point, or kind of wonder, hey, at some point, all these stocks that I love, the fundamentals haven't changed with them. They're all trading at a discount. The question is, how much of a discount is my entry point supposed to be?
I believe it's Warren Buffett that said, be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy. So I would be looking to buy the blood on the streets. But to your point, you could be catching a falling knife. However, if you have a macro outlook, a long term outlook, it doesn't matter because these are depreciated values. You look at the charts, and many of these indexes and cryptos are oversold. They're in the oversold zone. Now, it doesn't mean they can't stay there for a good amount of time, weeks, it may be a couple months before they actually bounce. I think the big catalyst will be, when will we have some sort of resolve with these tariffs? Because the market needs to know, okay, are they indeed in place? Here's what China is going to do. Here's what the United States is going to do. Or it's just a negotiating tactic and gets lifted. Then the markets can have a direction to go in because there's some level of certainty. So I'm personally looking to buy the dip, not financial advice, of course. We've seen this story in different with different catalysts over time, whether it be March 2020, whether it be 2008, whether it be 2000 with the dot-com bubble popping and more. It's an opportunity for sure. So if you have dry powder, it's certainly worth exercising or going through the data and saying, where can I take a position?
This morning, we're seeing some downward pressure on the crypto majors. Bitcoin's down 1.4%, ETH down 2%. Bitcoin's back at around 81 and change, 81, 285, it looks like right now. What do you make of how those names have traded? And what are you telling your listeners about trying to approach the crypto market more broadly, Tony?
Oh, sure. It's a great question. Overall, I think Bitcoin has held up pretty well. I thought Bitcoin yesterday was going to maybe dump down to the 70,000s, honestly, but it held up, and that's a good sign. Now, it doesn't mean that there couldn't be more really uncertainty around tariffs in the coming days, even into next week, where Bitcoin could tumble. But overall, it's holding up pretty well, and that's a great sign. I do believe we are still in a bull market. There hasn't been an invalidation, and certain key support levels have not been broken. But it's certainly, we have to wait and see which direction the market decides to go. But it gets to a point where things are oversold and there are no more sellers really. Like, what more can you do? A lot of the gains we made in Q4 with Trump's victory have now been wiped out. And as mentioned, we're in that oversold zone. So I'm pretty much telling folks, just be patient. Maybe don't do anything right now. But the next step would be to look to buy the dip if possible. But let's see, let the dust settle in the market right now overall, and then we can take an action.
Of all the phrases I've heard from advisors and brokers and traders the last few days, it's wait and see. That is the magic phrase, especially as it relates to new tariff policy, how those will impact the supply chain, uncertainty for major corporations being forced maybe to pass off some of those costs onto U.S. consumers. Wait and see seems to be the theme. While we've gotten onto the issue of crypto, I'd love to get your perspective about the White House announcing a strategic Bitcoin reserve not long ago. Tony, to me, this did not seem to be, I kind of watched the price of Bitcoin kind of fall, I believe, after that announcement, right? This isn't necessarily expanding the balance sheet with new purchases. It's sort of saying, hey, we're going to hold on to the seized assets through forfeiture, through criminality, and other things. Was that the announcement that we got out of the White House that the crypto community really wanted, or did it fall short in any key ways?
I think it was definitely the news we wanted, but I think it was priced in with the Q4 run up, if you know what I mean, right? Buy the rumor, sell the news. Folks knew Trump was going to take action because he was so bullish on Bitcoin. He spoke at the Bitcoin conference last year and much more. But just the timing of it was the correction after a Q4, a very strong Q4 run up, incredible performance. And then you throw tariffs into that, and it just ends the party, right? This tariff uncertainty has just put a damper on everything. Folks are not really even thinking about the Bitcoin reserve as opposed to, oh my God, what are we in a recession, a forced recession from these tariffs? What's going to happen in the next 6 months? So it's taking investors' minds off of the great news that came out from crypto and looking at the macro and the economy, rightfully so. And the other aspect is we have the executive order, but we don't have the methodology as to how they're going to buy Bitcoin, because that will be even more bullish. Holding on to the Bitcoin they seize, it's simple, right? That's a great start. You don't need Congress for that. But in order to get Congress to sign off on it, you need to show a revenue neutral way where you're not putting the burden on taxpayers on how you're going to buy this Bitcoin. And I think that would be even more bullish.
Tony, it seems like by the day the Trump administration or outside of the Trump White House, members of the Trump family are announcing some new splashy, headline grabbing, news making item with regards to cryptocurrency, whether it's World Liberty Financial, whether it's the Trump and Melania meme coins, whatever it is. It's easy to get lost in kind of the fog of all of the messaging. Let's take a step back and look at this from like the 30,000-foot view. How do you see the approach from this White House benefiting the crypto community if it is in fact doing that?
JD, I was super excited in Q4 and all of last year, to be honest, with Trump coming out and saying he was pro crypto and he would do all these things at Bitcoin Reserve. But then all of a sudden, he threw a monkey wrench into the system by launching his own meme coin. And then Melania launched her own meme coin. And a lot of folks in the crypto industry are not fans of that. I don't think any sitting president should have a meme coin. And that is the double-edged sword, unfortunately, with Donald Trump and crypto, because he's all for it. He believes in capitalism and, fostering innovation, but he's trying to make money off of it. And I don't think meme coins are the way to go about it. Now, his sons, Eric and Don Jr., are embarking on different business initiatives with Bitcoin mining, World Liberty Financial. I think those are okay because that's within the family, not directly connected to Trump. The meme coins, though, I am not a fan of that.
Isn't it wild they have to even sit there and say, I don't think a sitting president should have a meme coin? But that's kind of the reality, right? I think it was that
Yeah.
post inauguration release. And obviously we saw the prices spike up. And then not only that, but while he's been sitting president, since he's been sitting president, now in the last few weeks, he's taken a Truth Social reminding people how much he loves Trump coin. And of course, the price very quickly spiked and then very quickly fell back down. It's one thing to be a sitting president with a meme coin. I think it's something else altogether to be sitting president and promoting that meme coin. What was your reaction when you saw that happen, Tony?
It was just bad taste in bad. And like it left a bad taste in my mouth, right? It's just I want to be careful of my words here. I just don't think that's the right way. And a lot of people in the crypto industry, while they may not come out and voice how their concerns, they don't like this because it takes away a lot of credibility from the industry when you have a lot of people out there who are still trying to understand this technology. What is crypto? What is blockchain? And then they see Trump with a meme coin and then it's pumping and dumping. That their first impression, what is the president doing? Why is he getting involved in these things? This looks like a scam. And unfortunately, we're going to have to bring a level of knowledge that helps them to understand the technology versus the speculation aspect of it.
And I also want to ask you about the Trump Media and Technology Group part about all this, the potential sale of a couple $1 billion worth in stock. What have you seen from the performance of that company? And what are the type of questions about that I wonder that your listeners and your viewers are asking you about? Because to your point, there's so much going on here in the crypto space with regards to Trump. And I think it's very easy for people to get lost when, you might really have a good faith goal to try and learn more about this, but it's very hard to make heads or tails of what's legitimate and what's not when there are so many announcements. So what do you make of the Trump Media and Technology Group side of things?
Yeah, the Trump media folks did a great partnership with crypto.com. Crypto.com is a legit crypto platform where you can buy, sell, trade, stake crypto. And they're going to look to launch crypto ETFs. We'll see how that goes. In a way, it's competing with some of the issuers who are already out there. And, this is where are we crossing the lines too much, right, between public and private? And I think we need to have some clear guardrails because it's muddying the waters. And it would almost seem like Trump is trying to steal business from the ETF issuers out there who are doing Bitcoin, Ethereum ETFs, and much more. So I've honestly told folks, look, this is happening. I am not participating. I'm going to stick to the private sector and folks who are building the reputable folks on Wall Street, your BlackRocks, Fidelities, Franklin Templetons, and more.
What are the potential implications of the Trump family's launch of American Bitcoin, the new Bitcoin mining venture, for the overall cryptocurrency landscape, you think?
That's a fascinating one because I know they want to trade publicly as well. There's talks of that, and with the partnership with Hut 8. And the great thing about Bitcoin as a decentralized network, anyone can plug in and mine Bitcoin. I'm not sure what it means as far as the president because his kids are the ones operating it. Uh, could though, well, this could be the tricky part. When they're ready to buy Bitcoin for that reserve, are they going to go to American Bitcoin, which is owned by his family? So it's you see a bit of conflict of interest there, and it's hard to kind of delineate what is happening here until it actually happens.
Yeah. In other news, I know you covered this on your show this week. Stablecoin issuer Circle officially filing for IPO. Seems like the IPO chatter is picking up again, which is, I think, a good thing overall. The largest stablecoin issuer in the U.S. Why would Circle hit the public markets during this particularly volatile time for tech stocks, especially given the fact the Nasdaq, as we know, just wrapped up their worst quarter since 2022?
That's a great point. And something I wrote about in my newsletter, why would Circle look to IPO in a bear market potentially? And I think it goes back to my thesis that we're still in a bull market despite these headwinds we're facing in the short term. I think the markets could be seeing that stimulus or quantitative easing is going to be coming back sometime this year to fix a lot of these problems. Billionaire investor Paul Tudor Jones last year in Q3 said, we're going to have to inflate our way out of all these problems, essentially print our way to get growth and get the business cycle back on track. And I think the folks at Circle recognize that possibly later this year, things are going to go back to some sort of normalcy and the markets will rebound. But I think the IPO is absolutely makes sense for them. Stable coins are going to be a big part of how we move money throughout the markets and globally. And stablecoin legislation, for example, yesterday, the Stable Act got approved in the House. There's a version in the Senate that also got approved. So Trump has said he wants Congress to have stablecoin and crypto market structure legislation on his desk before the August recess. So the legislation's coming. Circle is trying to get ahead of that, do their IPO. They're going to raise capital. And of course, they're trying to expand their market share because they're trying to go up against Tether.
And then how do you see the credit card giants like Visa, MasterCard? They're all trying to explore new ways for crypto to integrate to stable coins and a lot more. What does that tell you about the overall space, the momentum, the landscape when you got names like that who now are trying to get more and more into the stablecoin game?
Oh, I think they have to adapt or die. This is the future of payments. And with stablecoins, for those who may not know, you have instant settlement. And many folks don't know how the sausage is made. Right now, to move money cross border, the actual settlement doesn't happen until days or sometimes weeks later. But the end consumer doesn't see that, right? They just see their balance has increased. And this is going to increase the movement of money at a faster pace, but also lower fees. Right now, the Western unions and these folks charge ridiculous fees to move money. That's going to be reduced. So stablecoins are going to help improve a lot of that. In addition, there's going to be the ability to earn yield on stablecoins. That is something they didn't include in the legislation right now, but I think it's going to come once the banks get involved. About a month ago, Bank of America's CEO said once stablecoin legislation is in place in the United States, we're going to launch our own stablecoin.
Finally, any other Trump or crypto related news you're expecting or looking forward to between now and the end of the year?
Boy, I want crypto legislation to make it through. I think is going to unlock tons of capital. I think the floodgates are going to open. Folks who have been hesitant or risk averse and saying, "Hey, we're not touching this until we have full clarity." I think we're going to see an economic boom as it relates to crypto, AI, and all these things. But crypto absolutely needs the legislation for it to be placed into different industries and have more capital flow in.